Good afternoon. My name is Johnston Makubu. I'm the Deputy Commissioner responsible for taxpayer engagement in operations. It gives me such great pleasure to welcome you into this results announcement today. We are proud to have this occasion where we get an opportunity to reflect on the work that we have undertaken over the last 12 months. It's quite a task to close your revenue year less than 24 hours and announce results. It suggests that there's a number of systems, machinery that needs to work in the background to ensure that we are able to produce those results. I acknowledge specifically the Deputy Minister of Finance and Commissioner special guests and our colleagues from the Treasury, the SARS leadership team that is here, and those SARS employees and their families that are joining us online. I indeed greet you. We will have a very short program that I will preside over. I'll give an opportunity to the Deputy Minister of Finance to address us, after which the Commissioner will come to the fore, and after that we will take questions from the floor, and Mr. Sipitisi Bego, who's our spokesperson, will convene and guide that process through, and will then close after that. Let me then allow the Deputy Minister of Finance to come and address us. Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Let me start by acknowledging, of course, the Commissioner of SARS, Mr. Edward Kisveta, the Governor of the Reserve Bank, the heads of our various independent institutions and representatives here, see the Auditor General and the Tax Ombuds, amongst others. It's very good to see you all. To the SARS leadership and the SARS leadership online at the various regional centres as well, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very, very pleased to be able to address you today on this particularly important day when our country's had a lot of discussion about our fiscal trajectory and future, where our Commissioner will tell us about how his team has netted revenue for the 2024-25 fiscal year. SARS is one of the most trusted institutions in the state, which is rare for a tax collection agency. Nobody likes to pay tax, but we are blessed that we have a very capable team at SARS, and it continues to be a critical institution supporting our democracy. It has had humble beginnings. In 96/97, it's accumulated 147 billion rand in revenue. We look forward to today's number. I have not been appraised of today's number, so I'll be as surprised as everyone in this room. But the Commissioner will give us not just the number, but the amount of work that goes into what SARS does. And I was very privileged to be able to be here last night looking at the last amounts of work all the way through to midnight that the SARS team was doing to get that last bit of revenue, to make sure that they maximize compliance, working through to the last hour to make sure the state is fully funded for this year, and I was hugely impressed. And I have no doubt that the revenue growth that we see today will show the effects and the positive role that SARS plays in facilitating effectively the funding of the state, which enables us to cover service delivery, social welfare, and other critical things. And we all know that we have challenges in this country. We have slow growth. We have high unemployment, we've got high levels of poverty and inequality. And it's especially because of this environment that SARS is an important institution for us in the state, because they ensure that we have the capacity to deliver particularly to those who have no resources for themselves. And as I said, I believe the Commissioner will take us through the details of their operational effectiveness and efficiency. But the consequence of an effective and efficient SARS enables us to facilitate, as the state, the country's socio-economic development, to make sure that the government can make policy choices and stimulate economic progress. SARS, of course, provides 90% of government revenue, and therefore a strong, robust, and well-funded SARS is fundamental to what our country needs to succeed. And in this regard, I fully have supported the additional revenue provided to SARS by the Ministry of Finance in the new budgets. And I am very, very excited by the modernization initiative that SARS will undergo, Now, when you consider that SARS is probably already the most modern institute in the state, I think we can look forward to seeing what an efficient government can actually do when allowed to use modern tools like AI and so on to optimize our revenue collection systems. And this initiative will bolster our revenue streams, and I have full confidence that what is being planned at SARS will lay the groundwork for a more prosperous future for all our citizens. So I want to thank the Commissioner in particular for your exceptional work here, and of course the Deputy Commissioners and the senior leadership and everyone at the regional centres, because you all have steered SARS towards a brighter future. Commissioner, your devotion has been instrumental in making sure that we have a remarkable institution here, an independent institution, and I think that you've made significant progress in rebuilding and revitalizing this institution. And personally, I'd like to thank you for the last 8 months of support and guidance you've given me as well. Through the strategic initiatives at SARS and the renewed focus on SARS vision, and a phrase I learned in the last 8 months, the higher purpose of tax, which I think everyone in this room now knows, which the Commissioner has embedded into all of us. This institution has regained public trust and set new standards for efficiency and effectiveness. This ongoing improvement is a testament to the dedication and effort of all the SARS employees, and I really look forward to watching this institution continue to grow, succeed, and build stronger levels of public trust. And to that, I'm grateful to every single SARS employee for the work that they do. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Minister, for those kind words. We know that everything rises and falls by leadership. More than 6 years ago, we got the pleasure of having a new leader land on our doorstep. It was the 1st of May 2019, and I was in Paris. And as I was in Paris, I got a message on my inbox on my phone from the incoming commissioner, clearly articulating what he expects from me and what I should expect from him. And I was like, wow, there's a new sheriff in town. We are privileged to have Commissioner Kisveta as our leader in this organization, a visionary leader giving direction, clarity, and guiding us towards Vision 2030, which we've just crafted in our strategic plan for the next 5 years. And it gives me pleasure to introduce him to come and address you today. Commissioner, over to you.
Sorry, it looks like the mics were set for me. So, Sawubona, Sanibonani, Dumelang. Good afternoon. Goeiemiddag. Deputy Minister of Finance, Mr. Ashraw Sarapen, thank you for being here to support us. I have received the apology of the Minister who could not be here today, and like to thank him in his absence. Governor of the Reserve Bank, Lesetja Hanaho, Director General of Home Affairs, Mr. Tommy Makode. I know he has accepted. Oh, there he is, right in front. Executive Secretary of ATAF, Mr. Logan Watt, Ms. Yanga Mputa, our Tax Ombud, Ms. Mamelau Malakalaka, Acting CEO of the OTO, the members of the SARS Audit and Risk Committee. We have present here Ms. Carmen Mpelwane and Ms. Alice LaRue. Our ARC Chair became a grandfather yesterday and today had to leave for Angola, so he sends his apology. Ms. Numpakamo Tanzima, the business unit leader for SARS of the Auditor General of South Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, the senior officials at National Treasury, SARS Executive Committee, executives and colleagues, you saw earlier our many officers dialing in and who will now be watching this presentation as well. Our invited guest who joins us today, including a few long-standing taxpayers. This morning at 11 o'clock I had the privilege to spend a few minutes with them, the eldest of which is 107 years old. So we have a taxpayer who was auto-assessed in the past filing season, who is 107 years old, and still have clarity of mind. A special mention to Mr. Henry Cronje, fondly known as Henry. He was one of those on the call this morning, and he was involved integrally in the development of the Customs and Excise Act since 1994, when it came into its existence. At 98, I am told he's still actively involved in editing the Lexis publication. At 98, whatever he's having for breakfast, I want a double dose. Very special to have my mother here today, accompanied by my sister Naomi. My mother will be 86 in October, and she's also an active taxpayer who was auto-assessed for the last 3 years. All stakeholders present, media representatives, thank you for covering our event. Fellow South Africans listening on the public platforms, welcome to the SARS 2024-25 revenue announcement, those physically in the room and those connected online. I sometimes wish we had a room large enough at events such as this. I want to start by just reminding all of you that SARS is a story of hope. We are clear that we exist to serve the people of South Africa. And we are inspired by the impact that we know we have on the lives of citizens. Today, we want to express and express appreciation and recognize amongst them those who are still active, and we chose, as I said, some of the oldest, and I want to just share with you some of their names. I've mentioned my mother is here, but we also have this morning met with Ms. Emerentia Lecourt de Bilot, the 107-year-old taxpayer, Ms. Aletta Martinier Kettle, the 102-year-old taxpayer, Christina Levisa Trute, 101. I told her this morning in cricket terms she would be 101 not out. Mr. Henry Cronje, who I told you is a pioneer in customs and excise and still active. Mr. Petrus Johannes Delaporte, 92. Then Miss Ivy Maureen Swelly. I met Miss Mswelly on a visit in the Durban branch, and she was in the queue, and I asked her, "What are you doing here, Gogo?" And she says, "I am just in very prim and proper. I am just here to ensure that all my affairs are in order." And so, what a wonderful moment for me to meet her. And we have awarded these exemplary taxpayers with a SARS Taxpayer Appreciation Award, something they can hold dear, but also to give them a clear message that we value the contribution and commitment that they have and continue to make. And again, to them, halala, thank you. We salute you. Returning to our core business, SARS has the mandate to collect all taxes that are due to the state, to ensure optimal compliance with tax and customs laws, and to facilitate legitimate trade through our customs service. But whilst we administer laws, our higher purpose is about enabling government to build a capable state that fosters economic growth and social development, serving the well-being of all South Africans. Without the important institution of SARS, our democracy would be unfunded. SARS is a national treasure that belongs to all of us and should never be taken for granted. Since the dawn of our democracy, the Revenue and Customs Administration has contributed over 24.5 billion rand at a compound annual growth rate over the 3 decades of 9.8%. And during this time, our tax base has grown from 2.7 million to 33 million taxpayers, or a CAGR, compound growth rate, of 8.3%. The focus on SARS in the past 6 weeks has been that of great scrutiny and resounding support. This has reminded us of the significant role of SARS, but also the degree of dependency of many millions of South Africans who benefit from our work. The hopes, the fears, and the anxieties of South Africans would remain unattended, and the material conditions of the most vulnerable would be even more dire than what we have today. Everything we do is about the transformational impact we have on the lives of people. This is our higher purpose. We honor this privileged work and are committed to continue working hard in the name of every South African. Indeed, the establishment of an autonomous, independent agency and the subsequent success of SARS is one of the proud achievements of our young democracy. I would now like to turn to probably the only reason you came here today, which is the outcome of the financial year 2024-2025. In February 2024, the Minister announced a printed estimate for net revenue of 1.863 trillion. Mainly due to a decline in economic assumptions, the Finance Minister revised this estimate to 1.841 in the medium-term announcement in October. And in his recent budget announcement on the 12th of March 2025, this estimate was revised upwards to 1.846 due to the improved revenue collections. The final result we will announce today was delivered under tough and continuing challenging circumstances. GDP at 4.9, wages increased lower than was estimated a year ago, fuel consumption was lower, a good message because of the improvement in production of electricity, but a bad message if you're a tax collector because our levies went down. Imports declined from what was initially assumed to be 6% growth, actually declined by 1.3%. And the supply chain security remains at risk due to geopolitical tensions. The impact locally of our own logistics constraints continues to hamper growth in the economy. And globally, tax and financial crime, as well as debt recovery, is a concern shared by my peers around the world. Deployment of digital technologies and AI and evolving business models provides or presents both an opportunity as well as a risk. It is true that whilst we can reimagine our operating models, so too can criminals, and we contend with that as we try to do our work. Notwithstanding these conditions, we have delivered a very pleasing revenue result. I am therefore pleased to announce that SARS has delivered on the challenge set by the Minister during his budget announcement. The challenge he set was 1.846 trillion. In fact, as at midnight last night, on the 31st of March 2025, our preliminary net revenue results totaled 1.8551 billion. Thank you. Representing a year-on-year growth of 6.6% in a projected GDP of around 4.9%. In summary, therefore, against the revised estimate, gross collections was 2.303%, which is 6.9% higher than prior year and 8.8 billion above the revised estimate. Refunds of 447.8 billion is 8.2% higher than the prior year and 3 billion above the revised estimate. a net revenue of 1.885.1 trillion is 6.6% higher than prior year and 8.8 billion above the revised estimate. So in summary, net revenue of 1.8551 trillion is a growth of 114 billion higher, a growth of 6.6% against the prior year, and exceeds the revised estimate by 8.8 billion rand, which is, we believe, in the current environment, a very credible outcome delivered by SARS. Before I share the details of the year's results, I would like to focus on the project of rebuilding SARS, because these results do not come about by themselves. They come about because of the work, the hard work, the focus, the diligence of 13,000 men and women whom we are privileged to lead. And I would like to tell you a little bit about that. The essence of the recommendations from the Commission of Inquiry into Tax Administration directed us to focus and restore leadership, governance, and integrity, and the rebuilding of institutional capability in order that the performance be reinstated. This was an intentional and deliberate program against which I would like to now report. It is the strategic plan tabled 5 years ago. In this plan, we tabled an aspirational vision to become a smart, modern SARS with unquestionable integrity, trusted and admired, along with a clear strategic intent to build an administrative system based on voluntary compliance. This strategic intent finds expression in 9 strategic objectives which has guided consistently the rebuilding of the institution. To track progress on the organizational integrity of SARS, we have instituted clear measures which are regularly measured and surveyed, because we believe that we measure everything. Only that which gets measured gets done. We cannot live in a false sense of hubris that we are achieving what we set out to do unless we measure it. And so I'd like to share with you some of these trends that reflects the positive and encouraging outcome. We call these perspectives on our organizational integrity. Firstly, in taxpayer service, we have seen an increase from 2019 of 54.88% to the recent measurement against objective criteria tabled in Parliament in our service charter of 87.13%. We measure taxpayers' attitude towards compliance. In 2018-19, when we first measured it, it was 66%. In our recent measurement, we have gone up by 11 percentage points to 77%. The next one is a very important one for us, because public trust is sacrosanct for the work we do. Our behavior must be irreproachable. Our integrity must be beyond question, so that people who do not like to part with money do so whilst knowing that they have been treated professionally and fairly, and that their contribution is towards a cause that is worthy. And so when we can tell you that in 2018-19 public trust in SARS was at a low of 48%, it is with immense pride that we can share with you in our recent assessment, public trust has gone up to just under 75%. Incredible vote of confidence by the public. We measure voluntary compliance because that is our strategic intent. And in 2019, voluntary compliance index was 62.85%, and again has increased to 66.29% when we measured it earlier this year. And then the Auditor General is here, so we are very pleased to say that in 2022 through to the 2019 through to the current year, SARS has very proudly not only achieved an unqualified report, but in the last 3 years a clean audit report, which again is a testament that in order to deliver these exceptional results, we do not have to do so in an environment of poor governance. And then very close to my heart is our people, because without the people, we are nothing. And so we focused very, very diligently on creating a more conducive environment for our staff during this period. And we introduced the notion of employee engagement with a very deliberate and intentional program to drive that. And again, we are very pleased to say that when we measured it in 1920, it was at 61.6%. And we have just received the report of the latest survey we've done in the first calendar quarter of this year, and our employee engagement had gone up to 71%. Again, so why are these indicators important? They don't speak about money, but it speaks about building an institution that can give confidence about the sustainability of giving effect to the mandate and the confidence with which we can project the revenue that is incumbent on the work that we do. And so these are what we call lead indicators at the heart of the rebuilding of SARS that gives us confidence in the sustainability of South Africa's fiscal integrity. Because tax revenue remain the lowest cost of funding government's program. It's cheaper than borrowing money, it is less impactful than raising taxes, and ultimately it is about spreading the tax base equitably across all those who have a paying obligation. Let me now return to some of the detailed results. And you will see there that in terms of each of these tax items, have a quick glance across it, but in the tax product analysis, we see that we have had a 12.56% growth, 12.6% growth in personal income tax. In corporate, we have had a growth of just over 2%. In VAT, a growth of 2.3%. Import duties, 8.6%. Taxes on property, a growth of almost 16%. Dividends tax and STC, a growth of 9.5%. Specific excise of 11.5%. Net fuel of 6.27%, and other taxes growing at 4%, a grand total of just under 6.6% growth year on year in net revenue. The slides that follow just gives a little bit more detail about that. So personal income tax, we can see this year contributed 733 billion rand against 650 billion rand the year before. Pleasing to say that our refunds in each of these categories have also increased. I want to pause for a moment and talk about two-pot retirement withdrawals, because this has been topical. Here, I can share that in record time, we had to build an administrative capacity to provide directives, unprecedented volumes of directives, and to provide it in near real time so that all of the pension funds who applied for these directives could give effect to the will of those who withdrew. And so of the 2.8 million taxpayers who in the last financial year submitted an application for a directive, we were able to issue directives to just over 2.5 million, which is related to almost 2.7 million taxpayers and allowing an amount of 47.7 billion rand to flow back into the economy had a good multiplier effect. We saw a little bit of an uptick of that in consumption, along with the governor's helpful hand to lower interest rates, and generally inflation trending down, and the net tax collected from this initiative being 11.87 billion rand. What is really pleasing here, if you look at the spread across the various tax margins, you'll see that about 645, or a quarter of those who applied for the directive, did not pay tax because of the threshold where they find themselves. So a lot of the concerns about taxing poor people has no basis, because those who are below that threshold receive their money in full. And then in the middle three segments, where we have those who earn a little bit more, that's where the bulk of the contribution of the almost 12 billion came. Also interesting to note is that generally it is the middle class families who have dipped their hand into the retirement cookie jar, and wealthy people, clearly to the small extent that they did, we think that that is how they manage the diversity of their portfolio. So that is really a story behind the two-pot retirement withdrawals. I think overall the balance between retention and withdrawal, 2/3 and a third respectively, was a fine, or what I call a Goldilocks solution to a problem of attending to short-term financial needs, which is dire for many families, whilst retaining a portion of that for retirement, which is very important for keeping the pressure off the state for further social grants. On corporate income tax, there you see the growth of 323 billion against 316.9 billion previous year. I will come back and touch on some of the compliance trends we see there in a moment. And value-added tax, which is the next tax, 458 billion against a prior year of 447 billion. So that's VAT. I want to then move on to customs duties and fuel levy. There we see an increase to 7.6 billion from 70.5 billion last year. And fuel levy, we see there a decrease from 91.5 to 85.8, reflecting a lower consumption due to an improved electricity production, but also a shift from using diesel as an alternative fuel for electricity towards rooftop solar. So positive for the economy, not so good for tax collection. And so what we thought we would also share with you is just a view of tax revenue by province, along with the growth. And these are the constitutional provinces, the 9 provinces in South Africa. And there we see Gauteng growing the net revenue contribution by 5.48%, KwaZulu-Natal by 6%, the Western Cape by 9.7%, the Eastern Cape almost 7%, 6.9%, Mpumalanga 10.25%, Limpopo 17.24%, Northwest 10.14%, Free State 10.06%, Northern Cape 0.38%, bringing again the total of 6.6. We thought it's important just to see where the economic activity sits. And of course, you also have to look at the actual contributions rather than just the growth. And there you see that most of the economic activity is in Gauteng, and we have ranked that for you in order of the size of contribution. Another lens through which we look, and this is for the interest of our directors here, because they would like to see how well did they do. And here we have given a view for our own employees. So the large business and international grew by 5.8%, Gauteng North region by 9%, KwaZulu-Natal by 5%, Western Cape by just over 9%, Gauteng South by 3.3%, Eastern Cape by just over 9%, Limpopo by about 17.5%, Northwest by 9.39%, and Free State by 11.24%. And then we have high wealth individuals by 15.4%. Head office, that's because we also collect taxes. We make the occasional phone calls, and we grew 17.06%. We really worked hard. And then that must still be in our final reconciliation, be allocated, is the amount at the bottom. And here again, you can see the largest contribution coming from our large business and international segment, followed by Gauteng North, as one would expect, down to the Northern Cape as one of our smaller regions. So that gives you a sense of how the regions performed. And let's, at this stage, applause and give recognition for the hard work under the leadership of the directors. I know they're all smiling because they know that they have achieved what we set out to do as a team. You hear us speak a lot about our compliance program. And so I want to spend a few minutes, if you will allow me, to talk about compliance revenue. Central to the work we do is our compliance program. This is the program of work we formulate at the beginning of the year and set out to execute or implement as we give effect to our mandate objectives. The result of this work produces additional revenue which otherwise would not have been in the fiscus because it has not been paid over voluntarily by taxpayers to SARS. We therefore refer to this as the compliance dividend, or the revenue from administrative efficiencies. This year, I am pleased to announce a total of just over 300 billion rand from our compliance program. It represents a year-on-year growth of around 17% and is made up of the following specific areas. And this is, I am often reminded, 32 million little things we do to produce 300 billion rand. I see the DDG of Treasury is there. I don't think I welcomed him earlier, and I don't know when he snuck in. But welcome to our Treasury colleagues. 94 billion rand is included in this amount by resolving over 3.7 million instances of outstanding debt. This is debt that would not have been collected had we not made the call, send a SMS, send a friendly letter, change the color of the letter from black to red, and eventually send the sheriff and issue a court, a civil judgment. And that's before we have to resort to freezing bank accounts and assets and attaching assets. So this is the suite of work we do. 307 million instances producing 94 billion rand. Included in this is the debt project that we embarked on in the past year. 103 billion from tax verifications, where risks are flagged through our AI-driven risk profiling models, powered by big data. We then look at the alert, we do debt equalization, and these are the refunds that we then further investigate, our staff further investigate. And this suite of work amounted to 1.7 million verification cases, producing the 103 billion rand. 59 billion from syndicated crime. These are complex crimes where more than one taxpayer is involved, often cross-border. That they executed 320,000 compliance audits. 30 billion from, the 59 was from customs and compliance audits, and the 30 billion from syndicated crime, conducting 198 complex investigations. 14 billion from general compliance work, doing 200,000 follow-ups with individual taxpayers who have outstanding issues on the account that needs to be completed, and invariably when a taxpayer account is untidy, it's because they owe us money. 26 million service-related interactions at our branches, either via a phone, via a self-service platform. We assist taxpayers and traders to comply. And so this, amounting to the 301 billion to the fiscus in this current year, a growth, of 15.8%, or 16.25% of our total net revenue. Slightly higher this year than in previous years because of our added focus on the debt recovery project. I would like to share some of the phenomena and themes that we encounter in non-compliance. Firstly, let me deal with customs. On the 1st of September, we introduced VAT on small parcel e-commerce imports because the high street retailers experienced an inequitable situation that they were paying the duties in full, whereas clearing agents who brought in small parcels for thousands of individuals did not have to pay VAT, and neither did they have to pay the exact duty because there was a de minimis of 20% on goods below 500. We focused firstly on the clothing, textile and footwear in September, and from the 1st of February expanded that across the other range, and these goods therefore collectively resulted in more than 6-fold increase in the revenue that we collect from this. Small for now, it's under 200 million rand, but as we step this up, and this year we'll have a full year, we believe we estimated ultimately a revenue prejudice of about 3 billion rand, and we hope to approximate that value as we enforce this new regime. It's an example of administrative action that has a direct revenue result. Special focus also on high-risk industries, inexcisable production, such as fuel, alcohol, and tobacco, where blatant non-compliance is prevalent. We've had successful convictions across these high-risk industries with a potential prejudice of around 5 billion rand. But let me tell you, we are merely scratching the surface. There is so much more work to do in the area of customs crime, underdeclaration, mispriced, trade mispricing, trade-based money laundering, to name a few. There are currently 105 cases on the NPA roll, 33 of which are on trial, while 72 of them pending an allocation of a trial date. To enforce the regulations, 27 importers and clearing agents were either suspended or cancelled through our licensing, registration and cancellation committee due to various non-compliance issues, and as I said, mostly linked to clothing, textile, footwear, tobacco and cigarettes and alcohol. But it's across the board. There was also a substantial increase in the efforts to remove illegal imports from circulation. The number of seizures has increased by 33%, and the value of seized goods has decreased by 12%, which compared to the end of March to almost 6 billion, and there's a fuller table available for those who have interest, like the media. In terms of syndicated tax and customs crime, here we are dealing with complex syndicated tax and customs crime which require a greater degree of collaboration with local as well as international law enforcement agencies. And it requires effective enabling legislation for information exchange and for joint enforcement action. The tobacco and gold industry, illicit trade industry, is a typical example where we've seen success in the dismantling of a complex scheme through our investigative and prosecution work of these syndicate perpetrators. Just in this industry, 10 billion assessments have been raised and already 4.2 billion of cash recovered. Over the past 5 years, our syndicated tax and customs division, their efforts resulted in revenue recoveries totaling 66.7 billion, 24 of it being revenue collections, 1.3 billion in refund savings, and 40.5 billion in revenue leakage prevention. In the illicit trade in tobacco and gold, which is often used also for money laundering, in this year we have continued to collaborate with local and international enforcement authorities, and this has made significant inroads in both the gold and illicit industry, issuing assessments of a further 10 billion. Now, a contentious issue is still the use of daily monitoring of licensed tobacco manufacturers. We will continue to deploy this technology. Here we use smart technologies and closed-circuit TV installed at tobacco manufacturers, despite the significant resistance by some industry players. SARS continues to engage with industry to discuss the implementation process, and we are also appealing the current judgment against the use of CCTV implementation. This approach will extend to other areas of abuse and criminality. Turning to large and international business, the audit interventions within this segment typically relates to transfer pricing and base erosion and profit shifting schemes. They are varied, they are complex, and mainly involve exotic transactions and business arrangements that result in permanent loss of revenue to the fiscus, as well as an erosion of the tax base. For the 24-25 financial year, 19 such cases have been completed, consisting of 8 transfer pricing, 5 international tax, and 5 corporate income tax and 1 dividend tax audits and investigations. This work raised assessments of 2.2 billion and cash of 2.8 billion. 40 cases are currently in progress. The base erosion and profit shifting schemes, where the exotic finance arrangements are deployed, sadly, are often sponsored by big banks and professional firms that either promote or engage in schemes that involve transfer pricing and international tax. The main highlights under the BEPS themes include exotic structures or restructuring of businesses and the sale of businesses involving aspects such as share buyback transactions, international taxing arrangements using offshore passive entities to avoid South African tax on offshore income, transfer pricing arrangements involving engineering, procurement, and construction contracts, incorrect classification of entities, offshore marketing hubs located in low tax jurisdictions, and the use of offshore passive treasury entities to fund operations are some examples that we believe are abused. Other significant themes of concern is the abuse of the employment tax incentive scheme, companies not ring-fencing the assessed losses in line with legislation, second-hand gold abuse of the VAT system, stock write-off and impairments, and capex, particularly in the mining industry. Forward-looking, to provide greater clarity and certainty, we must progress the advanced pricing agreement program that has been introduced into legislation in the recent TAA Laws Amendment Act of 2023 and published on December 2023. And this is to allow companies who engage in corporate actions to rather approach SARS ahead of time and get a tax certainty ahead of implementing it so that they know what the tax price would be of a particular transaction. Turning to high wealthy individuals, given the complexity of the high wealth individual segment, we strive to achieve voluntary compliance and employ a differentiated service model with robust case management and targeted enforcement measures to uphold fiscal equity. This segment has made significant strides in base broadening, strengthening tax compliance and enforcement within the segment. Notably, the identification of a critical legislative gap in terms of section 42, brackets 2, brackets B of the Income Tax Act, this was just for the nerds in the room, has paved the way for regulatory enhancements that are expected to mitigate potential revenue losses amounting to billions of rands in the future. Additionally, a landmark court judgment on a scheme with tax implications exceeding 1.3 billion reinforced the application of substance over form principles in GAR-related transactions. It's always been a matter that has ducked us. Now we have court precedents, and therefore it helps us with providing advice, advanced voluntary compliance, but also presents a clear, credible threat for those who try to abuse it. Continued focus on trusts, family offices, and related entities to ensure greater compliance in areas such as estate duty, capital gains tax, donation tax, as well as cross-border transfers in this area. In our specialized audit, thematic interventions that was completed included 236 lifestyle audits, including luxury vehicles. Sadly, luxury vehicles and properties are used to mask financial flows, and it's straightforward, blatant money laundering, and our focus on that cannot be enough. In this area, we have raised assessments of 1.8 billion rand. 28 pay-as-you-earn, I mentioned ETI audits, with an assessment value of 230 million rand. 80 security industry audits where there's also extensive abuse, with assessments valuing 3.6 billion rand. 82 financial intelligence center, these are tip-offs we get from the FIC, with assessments of totaling almost 2 billion rand, and 35 customs audits with an assessment value of 1.3 billion rand. Turning to litigation, SARS is always committed to resolving all tax matters within its remit and in a timely manner. However, where there is legal uncertainty, the taxpayer has the right, and SARS is often duty-bound, to approach the court to provide legal clarity. In this regard, our litigation division has achieved a success rate of 92%. And customs and excise litigation of 87%. In the appeals court, our success is 69%, with 25 cases in favor of SARS, 11 in favor of taxpayers, and the rest are dependent on litigation in other courts. While the tax board has achieved 77%, with SARS conceding cases and taxpayers withdrawing 47% of cases when taxpayers are no longer confident in their matter. Just yesterday, the Constitutional Court in 3 matters took major decisions to provide legal clarity and certainty. The Constitutional Court reaffirmed the critical role of the tax court in determining tax-related matters. It reaffirms the constitutionality of Section 105 of the Tax Administration Act by restating that all tax matters related starts at the tax court, especially if the court has not determined the matter nor heard any objection, if there is anyone. The Constitutional Court clarified that the instances where a taxpayer can directly approach the court is if there are any other grounds by way of an appeal to the tax court. This is to prevent piecemeal adjudication of the matter and prevents vexatious litigation, which tends to abuse the court processes either to gain time or advantage in one or other way. And so again, the judgment yesterday by the Con Court provides another plank of certainty and clarity, but also to deter the blatant abuse of the court to settle their scores. In terms of our revenue program, a few other areas. In terms of our central supplier database, which is used and managed within the Treasury family to identify non-compliance by government suppliers. Here we see a lot of abuse, and compliance efforts are continuously underway to engage with identified taxpayers with the aim of improving compliance and collecting all revenue due, together with interest and penalties. When we often find that those who want to have access to services provided by government tend to do a tick box assessment of their compliance, but are substantively non-compliant, or in certain cases not even registered. And these are the areas that we have to focus on. In terms of VAT on imported services, government departments and the public finance management entities are engaged with the aim of evaluating and improving their compliance with the provisions of the VAT Act. And this is again regarding the payment of VAT due on the acquisition of services from non-VAT registered non-resident suppliers. And this is an area of work where we still find abuse and therefore revenue leakage. In electronic services, we continually build our capability to analyze third-party data and to identify non-compliance by non-resident suppliers of electronic services, which results in registration and payment of VAT that are due by these entities. And so I thought we would share with you some of these trends, some of these observations. The next is to talk about the SARS revenue management system. We've built this to remind ourselves that when the minister announces a printed estimate, it is based generally on the assumptions of what the economy would do in a particular period and the tax policy instruments and tax rates that would be exacted on economic activities. But that's a theoretical number. It's based on assumptions. It's modeled between the three institutions of National Treasury, SARS, and the Reserve Bank. But the actual revenue requires two other parts to be part of a system. And so what you see there as taxpayer behavior and confidence gives you a sense of compliance. And this is determined by the confidence taxpayers has in SARS and in government, the quality of the spend, wastage and corruption detracts from that, a sense of benefit, value for money, and ultimately taxpayer behavior. If that goes down, what will end up in the middle block will go down, regardless of what you have in the top corner of the triangle. To the left of that is the institutional capability. I spoke to you earlier about how we're building deep institutional integrity, how we select our work, which we frame as a compliance program, and the capability to give effect to that then determines the ultimate efficacy of SARS. And those three elements of the system combined then results in the revenue that we have announced today. And I think it is also why we make the continued plea for the continued investment in SARS. Let me share with you some strategic highlights between 2019 and 2024. We do not declare victory. We have a long way to go. Funding challenges remain, but we'd like to share with you some positive results. Firstly, in the area of in the area of digital transformation, we are pleased that we are recognized by private sector institutions and by our peers as a leader in digital transformation in the public sector. And that award our teams won for the work we have done in auto assessment, the deployment of digital transformation plus artificial intelligence. The next recognition is being ranked as a #1 employer. That's not an insignificant feat for a public sector organization, to be recognized as the top employer by accountancy students in business commerce fields, and a #1 employer, the most attractive in business and commerce studies. So again, proud to say that we hold our own out there as an attractive employer. Recently, Microsoft visited South Africa, and amongst others, recognized SARS as one of the leading institutions globally for the deployment of artificial intelligence. And according to the president of Microsoft, one of only 2 digital government institutions around the world that is advanced as we are. And so it was with great delight that they invited us into a hackathon along with 3 other private sector, well-endowed financially participants. We went in with our meager team, meager financially, but great in stature, and took part in the hackathon. It was a 2-week grueling session, and we were absolutely delighted when in the field of 4 players, 3 of which were private sector, SARS won the hackathon. And it is building a proof of concept for how we can deploy AI into the contact center of the future. Just to summarize, therefore, our positive trends, the blue representing our core business, which is a compound annual growth rate in net revenue of 7.6%, in compliance revenue of 18.7%, voluntary compliance up by 3.4 percentage points, and that's hard work to even gain a percentage point, and trade facilitation up by 51%. The grey is very important because that speaks to the lead indicators of institutional integrity, and there, those numbers I've mentioned before, just to summarize them again: taxpayer service up to 87%, attitude to compliance at 77%, public trust at 75%, and employee engagement at 71%. So all in all, while we do not declare victory, we are pleased that the program and project of building SARS is bearing fruit, and again a testament to the hard work of 13,000 people at SARS. I now want to turn to the future of tax administration as we draw to a close. The first phase of modernization, I often remind our teams, was about digitalizing physical experiences. So taking paper and making it virtual, online forms. Taking the act of posting a return to sending it to us via email, on a digital platform. Physically assessing a declaration to now assessing a declaration using AI. And so the first phase was about transferring a physical experience into a digital experience. The next phase of modernization, which we call Modernization 3.0, is significantly beyond the digitalization of experiences. It is about the disintermediation of an experience. In other words, going from physical filing to online filing, the vision is to disintermediate the need to file, as auto-assessment have proven. And so 5 million taxpayers this year did not have to file because we did not provide them with an online experience. We removed the experience at all. Those who did file could do so remotely anywhere in the world. If the moon had internet, we would place them on the moon as well. And they could submit their return to us completely online and would have received their assessment in under 5 seconds. When I share that with my colleagues abroad, they literally look in awe because there's such a far distance for many of them to travel. And so this is therefore the next ambition, to build a smart digital tax administration platform that is embedded in data science, in artificial intelligence, and other enabling technologies. And it's growing exponentially. It's hard to keep up with. And the aim is to build a platform that fosters trust, promotes efficiency, and ensures transparency. In the age of AI, ethical AI matters. And we have to revolutionize the way we engage with taxpayers. Because for us, the best service is no service. To do the work before you even think you need to do the work. That's our ambition. It's tall, but as our AI have demonstrated, we know that it is possible. We also want to talk about modernization, not only in the context of SARS, but in the context of the whole of government. Because a smart, modern SARS cannot exist in a government that is not smart and modern. And so we have begun to work with our colleagues in government. We have two of the leaders of institutions we work with here, the governor, the DG of Home Affairs, because we recognize that we have to fix the entire system because the chain is only as strong as the weakest link. And so a whole of government approach to modernization is no longer a nice to have. FATF, for example, requires us to demonstrate our ability to successfully prosecute complex tax evasion, illicit financial flows, money laundering, and terror financing. Tax and customs cross-border crimes are on the rise around the globe and is a huge area of concern for governments, but also for revenue authorities, for central banks, and for financial intelligence centers. And so this level of collaboration is important. We have an opportunity to leverage the progress we've made at SARS in digital transformation, as well as the deployment of artificial intelligence to strengthen our capability across various law enforcement agencies, such as SAPS, the Hawks, the SIU, and the NPA. SARS is already working with the Reserve Bank and DHA Home Affairs on an instant electronic payment system, a unique digital identity, and other enabling technologies. And this is and in addition to that, to strengthen our management at our ports of entry by working with the Border Management Authority. The following is the list of generational projects which SARS will embark on if properly funded, Deputy Minister, as part of, in collaboration with other government agencies as part of the next phase of modernization. Firstly, we need to prepare our staff because we cannot let any of them be left behind. I think it is irresponsible of leaders to retrench people because we haven't invested in them. And so the investment in SARS has a long lead time, and we've given our employees the assurance that we will take them along as we embark on this modernization journey, demonstrate proper steward leadership and workforce readiness, so that our staff know that in the future their co-worker will be an AI agent, not necessarily another human being. Establishing a unique digital identity system will reduce the level of fraud by improving the integrity and the recognizability of any individual or entity anywhere in the system of government, so that you can't have a job and get a social grant, for example, or you can't procure from the state but be delinquent. And so this is an important project. Then creating a comprehensive taxpayer account to enable both the taxpayer but also empower our staff to serve taxpayers. Modernizing our case management system, which is now 2 decades old. Embedding an entity-based compliance model which allow us to go from a reactive response to an instance of non-compliance to a proactive way of tracking and monitoring the compliance status of an entity or an individual on an ongoing and real-time basis. Building an instant payment system in partnership with the Reserve Bank. It's nice to have the Reserve Bank as a partner, Deputy Minister, because they pay. They've got a lot more money. They print money when they need it. We have to collect money. Modernizing our VAT administration system is very key because it's a huge area of abuse. And then modernizing customs and excise across the board, both physical infrastructure as well as the digital infrastructure. Revenue outlook for 2025. So yes, last night, midnight, the year end, this morning when we woke up, the scoreboard was 0. Last night at midnight, we had 1.855 trillion in the bank. This morning, the bank is empty. We have to start all over again. And so as I think about that, I'm reminded of the famous words of our beloved Tata Madiba when he said, "I have discovered the secret that after climbing a great hill, one only finds that there are many more hills to climb. I've taken a moment here to rest, as we do so now, to steal a view of the glorious vista that surrounds me, to look back on the distance I have come. But I can rest only for a moment, for with freedom comes responsibilities. I dare not linger, for my long walk is not ended." Rolihlahla Mandela. And that's how we feel on the 1st of April every year. After we've announced a wonderful revenue results, we have to get right back to the grindstone to start out earning the money that government requires. And so similarly at SARS, we dare not rest. A new challenge awaits. If we are to achieve the 2025-2026 initial estimate of 2.06 trillion set by the Minister of Finance, we cannot waste a single day. We have to break down that. I recently shared with our colleagues that on average, SARS has to collect 9 billion rand every working day. And that means over R1 billion every working hour in order to deliver the revenue that government needs. In this coming year, SARS will intensify efforts on an enhanced revenue recovery program using the additional 2 billion allocation. Central to this is the focus on outstanding debt already owing to the fiscus, as well as the millions of outstanding returns. We hope to recover an additional 20 to 50 billion and thus strengthen the fiscal situation in the medium term. In addition, we will continue the modernization of SARS to improve the overall efficiency and effectiveness of the tax and customs administration and strengthen our efforts to address the significant areas of non-compliance. The initial allocation for this year is 500 million rand, and we will engage the Minister over the next few weeks to increase this amount over the medium term. Unless we set up the investment in SARS, we remain compromised in our ability to effectively administer our legal mandate and thus sub-optimize the fiscal integrity of South Africa over the medium and long term. We'll focus on the following compliance themes. On balance sheet reduction, as you have heard, a focused effort on debt cash collections and outstanding returns. In addressing the tax gap themes, on tax base broadening, both formal and informal economy, on the international taxes with a strong focus on base erosion and profit shifting, as well as the digitalization of economies, on trade-based money laundering and illicit financial flows, specifically tobacco, fuel and gold industry, trade mispricing and undervaluation fraud, on e-commerce to focus on small parcels but also beyond, on high wealth individuals who have often the means to mask the true nature of their wealth. Cryptocurrency is no longer an emerging asset, it's a well-thriving asset, and South Africa, SARS, is proud to co-chair the crypto assets reporting framework that is led by the OECD. And in syndicated tax and customs crime, in specifically addressing VAT fraud and other tax crimes. How much progress we will make will depend on the long-term addressing and fixing the long-term funding of SARS. As I therefore close, and thank you for your presence here, but also more generally to those South Africans who are listening to us. Without taxpayers, travelers and traders, we have no tax revenues. I would like therefore to express unqualified appreciation to over 62 million citizens who through their consumption contribute to VAT. We often are told we only have 7 million taxpayers in South Africa, and then I have to tell them everyone who lives in South Africa contributes towards tax. To the 28 million, it's now 33 million registered individuals and trusts. To the 4 million companies, the 1 million VAT vendors, 650,000 employers, 338,000 traders, including authorized economic operators, and to the 13,100 hardworking men and women at SARS, thank you. Thank you, South Africa, for your contribution. And we know that with your support, we will continue to produce the work that we are mandated to do. I've recently penned a letter to all South Africans, which will appear online, but also in the weekend newspapers, as a measure of expressing our support, but also our appreciation for their support, but also our commitment to continue to serve them. That, I believe, is at the core of the work we do. The social contract we have with society determines the ultimate impact of our work and thus the contribution of revenue to fund the program of government. So with that, thank you for being here. Thank you, South Africa.
Tholele duna elintonga to your mom and dad for bringing the son of the soil on this earth, a visionary, a leader, a father, an advisor, a mentor, a coach. We are saying, Tata Madiba, it always seems impossible until it is done. You talk 2006 trillion, we talk 3006 trillion. Are we not saying that, SARS? Untu, walala, wasala, we are in it. The higher purpose is in these hands. Halala.
Okay. Thank you.
Please, Robin Mark.
Good afternoon. My name is Mpo Koka from the Sunday World newspaper. Unfortunately, I don't know my text number by heart. I just have 3 questions for the SARS Commissioner. The first one, so I've seen that there have been media reports that the South African Revenue Service has been finding it hard to get people who are high income earners to actually pay tax. So I just wanted to get a response from the Commissioner. What kind of attitude has the South African Revenue Services been getting from high income earners who evade paying tax? And then secondly, the Commissioner mentioned illicit financial flows. So how is that battle going? How is SARS trying to fight and combat illicit financial flows? And lastly, there's been a conversation in the political space and civil society space about the introduction of a wealth tax. What is SARS' attitude towards that? Does SARS support a wealth tax? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Your name and number.
Tshepo Mongwe, SABC News. On refunds, at 447, are you comfortable with your percentage of, with your refund as a percentage of your total collection, where it is at the moment? Thank you.
Any other question?
Okay.
It's Guy Tennyson, News 24. I've got to show you just this slide over here, where you've got the projection for next year, 2 trillion. There's a figure, PIT of 28.6, unless I'm missing something. Shouldn't that? I'm just wondering if that's correctly marked.
We'll check that.
PIT, because you've got PAYE at 785.5, wouldn't that be personal income tax?
Oh, so we have pay as you earn, which is paid on a certain PIT, which is by other provisional income earners.
I'm with you, but in your...
Can we
Okay.
check that
Yeah.
one outside?
Okay, sure, no
that's a
problem.
fact check. Okay. So I'm going to farm out some of these questions to some of the directors that are here so that they can earn their lunch. I will speak to IFFs, but also ask the governor to give a perspective because the Reserve Bank is an important monitor and regulator of cross-border flows. So he is here. I will give an answer on the wealth tax, but ask the director of the high wealth tax to just talk about the experience on high wealth earners. I will ask the deputy commissioner to talk to refunds, whether we think it's right, and maybe supplement that. So let me start by talking to generally just wealth tax, because we've been clear about our sharing a position in the public domain. So we don't support or not support any taxes. SARS is required to advise the minister, who is then principally accountable for deciding on tax policy. SARS does not take a position on whether tax policy is good or bad, but we do advise. So what is our advice on wealth tax at the moment? Our advice is the following. Firstly, that in many ways we already have a wealth tax. In order to introduce a wealth tax, we have to do a few things first. Firstly, ask who are the wealthy? How do you define them? Once you've defined them, the second question is where are they? Can you locate them? The third is, what would a wealth tax be and what would it replace? And the fourth is, how would you administer it? Because any tax policy is only as good as our capacity to administer it. So that's the backdrop when we think about a wealth tax. We know that in the budget ahead, the total income, the total employed South Africans is, let me round the numbers off to make it easy, is about 16 million. About 8 million of them earn below the income earning threshold, below the tax paying threshold. So they earn their money, they don't pay taxes. 8 million of them earn enough money to pay tax, from the lowest to the marginal tax. The 8 million, about 560 or 570,000 of them earn above R1 million. That segment contributes about 48% of all taxes collected from individuals. So if you think about it, about 3.5% of all formerly employed individuals in South Africa, about 3.5 to 4%, actually pay almost half of the tax. And so that's the first lens through which we must look if we ask about a wealth tax. The second is that we have a number of other taxes that are biased towards wealthy people because they have assets. So what are these taxes? Firstly, we have estate duty taxes that have certain exemptions for low asset owners, and for those who have more assets, it starts attracting a tax on demise of a taxpayer. The second is we have property taxes, and again biased towards wealthy people. There's a threshold below which you don't pay transfer duties, and there's a threshold that excludes primary residents from paying capital gains tax on disposal. So that's another way of taxing wealthy people disproportionately to poor people. You have, if you trade in shares, you pay a security tax. And so these are taxes, so estate duties, capital gains tax, donations tax is another tax, share trading, estate duty. These are taxes that are collectively biased towards wealthy people. So if we then think about whether or not we should introduce a wealth tax, and again, that decision is above my pay grade, but the advice we would give is we already have a significant tax burden on wealthy people in South Africa. And secondly, from the experience of other countries, it hasn't really worked successfully anywhere in the world. The one country where that had marginal success is in Switzerland, and there they swapped out income tax for wealth tax, and so to ensure that you have an equitable tax system. So that would be the advice we would give into the conversation of whether or not we should introduce a wealth tax or not. Is there a roving Mac? If you can ask Natasha to speak to the experience of high earners.
Thank you, Commissioner, and thank you for that question. So with regards to the perception that the wealthy are or are not paying sufficient tax, I think by and large, we are fortunate that for the most part, we experience compliant high wealth taxpayers. But that doesn't mean that taxpayers don't have the right to plan their affairs in a way that's most feasible to themselves. And it is for this reasons that the high wealth tax unit was formed in addition to providing a differentiated service model. So in terms of that perception, within the high wealth unit, which was formed, we have expanded our tax base. We've tripled it since inception to ensure that high wealth taxpayers are paying or are perceived to be paying their fair share. In addition to the two matters that the Commissioner has mentioned with regards to the identification of and closure of a critical legislative loophole and the landmark court judgment that we had, we are satisfied that we are doing enough from a compliance and enforcement perspective. We've also added to our radar not just high wealth taxpayer individuals, but trusts, associated entities, and companies as well. We are comfortable that the taxpayers that are on SARS's radar is being adequately serviced and that there is adequate compliance measures in place.
Thank you. Let me invite the Governor to talk to illicit financial flows, and then I will supplement.
Thank you very much. By definition, if they are illicit, they are unknown. So, you do not have the idea. We monitor cross-border flows in terms of the exchange control regulations. And when the flows are illicit, they take two different types. Firstly is that they would attempt to bypass the regulations to take money out of the country. There haven't been much of the illicit flows that come in. They tend to be going out. And secondly, they would then try to bypass the customs system either through under invoicing or transfer pricing, which then becomes a SARS issue. What we have between the two institutions is a system of matching. So people have either purchased or are selling goods across the border. And then they say to SARS, they had sold these goods overseas for $100. That is what is declared. But we run the cross-border payment system, and then we can tell that actually they received 150 and not $100. And at that matching point, we say to SARS, there is a transaction you might be interested in, and we leave it there. SARS would take a special interest. There also happens that people are taking money out for which they need approval in terms of the exchange control regulations. And there are a couple of ways of doing it. They can do it through that invoicing and under invoicing, or they simply transfer the money out. If they just transfer the money out, the bank that they bank with is supposed to pick these things up. And this used to be a problem because there used to be a jurisdiction where you could take money to, and you do not have to have a name, you just have a code, and nobody will know that it is your money. But now there is a mandatory exchange of information. So if you have taken money to another country and you are a South African, that jurisdiction is under an obligation to say to the South Africans, we have got Joe South Africa who has got an account here. This is how much money is here. We think you might be interested in how this money got here and how much the money is any. So the interrelationship between the revenue authority and the central banks then becomes important because these things then interact. And sometimes it just so happens that the money is there, and then we say, well, how did you get this money? And then we say, that, well, this is my money, and then we find that we can't do anything. And then he has got the power to say that it doesn't matter, we know it's your money. But here is your tax bill, pay the tax bill, thank you very much. And that's how it goes.
Thank you. So that's quite important, the relationship between the two institutions, to observe that. The governor spoke about stuff that you buy, that you then apply for an advance payment, which is inflated, and the declaration of the customs good is then, and that's the arbitrage that people look for. But we also have a few other mechanisms in place. We know we have R1 million discretion that citizens can use for offshore transactions without any further approval. Then we have within South African Revenue Service, we have an application for advanced foreign transfers. We would then do a compliance check, and where we have concerns, we address those concerns first, because we have a capital flight risk that we have to manage. But let me just say, trade-based money laundering, which some of the examples the governor spoke to, trade-based money laundering is a growing concern. It, in fact, at the World Customs Organization is an item that is fairly and squarely on our agenda, because trade is a huge medium for laundering money. Let me invite the Deputy Commissioner Makubu to speak to refunds. The pleasing thing that we have is that our refunds of the three revenue lines of gross refund and net refunds is actually the fastest growing. But there's a balanced view which you can share.
Thank you, Commissioner. So indeed, the 8.2% growth year on year on refunds is the fastest growing item. We know that there are one-off events in there. For instance, in the diesel refunds, we've just settled a large refund in the electricity sector, so we know where it's coming from, and we do monitor anomalies that take place. The Commissioner spoke about adopting machine learning and artificial intelligence to the tune of around 70 billion, where we have actually stopped refunds that were claimed in the system that didn't actually flow because of that prevention. So it's a critical balance that we play of allowing legitimate refunds. Our stance is, if a refund is legitimate, the sooner we can be able to pay it, the better we are able to drive growth in the economy. The refunds we've paid are around 6% of GDP. So it's important money that needs to go out as long as it is legitimate refund. So we are not concerned that 8.2% is on the high side, because we understand where the refunds stem from and which industries and sectors are driving that. Maybe lastly, refunds are a function of economic activity. So we do model what an economy such as ours should be able to generate in refunds, especially if you look at value added in the economy. So we do have a number of means and models that we test whether we are excessive or not. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as you can see by segment where the refund goes to, okay, on the second graph there.
Thank you. Last round, colleagues, journalists. It looks like, Commissioner, everything is clear.
Thank you. Once again, thank you very much. So just about this room, we have refreshed this room. This is actually our operations command center. Some of you had a walkthrough this morning. These screens don't normally look like that. Each of these screens are actually connecting our country, all of our service points, whether it is a generator, a server, a computer, a vehicle. We can track all of that around the country. We can see whether all of our sites are online, whether there is, in the good old days of load shedding, whether there's backup power that is there. But we also do an in-depth management of all of our casework, because we don't collect revenue per se. We resolve cases, and every case has a revenue outcome. Either more money or flows in or money flows out. So actually what we do is work all of these instances of service queries and cases that we generate, and the outcome of that is a revenue outcome, a compliance outcome, or a facilitation outcome. And that, therefore, is how we produce revenue. So thank you for your interest in SARS. Thank you for your support, all of our colleagues and friends and partners. And again, thank you for the media for reporting our work. And lastly, but most importantly, thank you to our colleagues in the room and the 13,100 people who are online and hopefully enjoyed this positive results announcement. Inkosi kakhulu. Die vergadering is nou behoorlijk.
No, everything is done, Commissioner.
The microphone. Okay.